So I don't think there's a lot of people in New York that get to have this incredible opportunity anywhere else by drinking inside of a ship. But you get to do that at Sunken Harbor Club. And that's what we're talking about today. This is The Build Out. I'm your host, Adam Teeter. So we're joined by Ben Schneider, St. John Frizell, and Garret Richard. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. I'm thrilled. So before we talk about this amazing bar that you built in downtown Brooklyn, I'd love to get a sense of your background, what got you into the industry in the first place, and how you all decided you wanted to be bar operator owners, like this insane business that you're in. So since Sunken Harbor sort of started at Fort Defiance, St. we'll start with you in terms of how you came into the business. I know you have a background in magazines, in media, why you decided to make the switch, and then how this all started.
Sure. I worked in restaurants and bars in New Orleans in the 90s.
Okay.
Nothing really notable. Then kind of ran out of road in New Orleans and moved to New York in 99.
Mm-hmm.
And started working in magazines. So I was at Bon Appetit magazine for about 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then during that time, got totally obsessed with cocktails. I guess it goes back to the 90s in New Orleans, but I guess it really was when a friend of mine loaned me his copy of Charles H. Baker Jr., his book, The Gentleman's Companion. That was in 2000.
Wow, okay.
And I just was instantly obsessed, and still am, 25 years later. But left Bon Appetit, and with the intention of working at Pega Club,
Mm-hmm.
the owner, Audrey Saunders, said to me when I was there, this is in 2006, the first year that they were open, she said, go and work in a neighborhood bar for a year, and then come back and talk to me then. So I started working for Ben Schneider, my friend, and that's how I got involved. And then I started working at Pega Club the following year, and then up and in the business ever since.
So Ben, what was this neighborhood bar?
The neighborhood bar was the bar at the Good Fork restaurant, which my wife and I, Sohee Kim, had opened in 2006.
Wow. Okay.
And that was my first. I had been a woodworker and an actor,
Mm-hmm.
and so he was when we met. She was in culinary school, and then she was working in a bunch of great restaurants. And at a certain point, I just looked at her and I said, "Hey, let's open our own restaurant." And we lived in Red Hook, so I designed and built the Good Fork, which is in some ways related to the Sunken Harbor Club. It's got a curved wood ceiling if you've never been there, and it's very cozy and has a romantic feel of its own. And so we opened this restaurant, and I had never worked in a restaurant a day in my life, even though I was an actor. Ironically, I had always worked in construction. And so we learned it all. And I thought I could, in the first week, I learned quickly that I could not manage, host, and bartend all at the same time. I was just basically literally turning around in a circle, and someone tapped me on the shoulder and said, maybe you should get a bartender. So St. John was one of those early bartenders, and he also helped me figure out the cocktails. And he taught me. Okay. I remember sitting at the bar. It was only a 4-seater bar, but it did cocktails for the whole restaurant. Not a huge place, but we had a great program. And I remember you teaching me the basics about balance, about the strong, the acid, and the sweet, and how those three things had to be in certain proportion to each other. And then from there, you could kind of build all kinds of different stuff. Mm-hmm. And so we started doing that, and you joined the team, and the rest is history. But I will also say, because it's related to the Sunken Harbor Club, that we knew each other because we lived in the same house on Coffee Street.
Really?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. It's an old captain's house that I rehabbed, gutted, and rebuilt. And St. John and his wife at the time lived in the downstairs apartment. And so we didn't really know each other too well. We had mutual friends, and that's how they came to live in the house. And the house has a very big backyard, and we did plays back there together because St. John is also an amazing writer. Okay. And he wrote these. Ben. You're welcome.
Ben's a great actor.
Thank you. Yeah, I was the lead in the plays, and we did a pirate play called Blow Me Down, written by St. It's a melodrama.
Oh, that's cool.
Runs an hour and 15 minutes tight.
Yep.
It's got an orchestra, 5 songs in the play.
Wow.
Whole incredible cast of characters. We just remounted it in Vermont 2 summers ago.
Oh,
and
that's
it was,
awesome.
And it was a hit. It totally worked. It killed. Somebody came up to see it. Different cast, but it totally killed. Anyway, it was called Blow Me Down, and that kind of, in a way, I think, was the start of the whole, adventure.
I mean, we built a ship in the backyard for that show.
Did, indeed. There were
now that I think about it,
two ships. Okay,
Yeah.
There was a ship and then another ship that was up on the deck, and because it was the Merry Widow versus the Black Eyed Susan, and these 2 competing pirate ships in the Caribbean. That's part of the plot. And there was in the play a naval battle, and the way we did that is we created cannons using like cardboard sonotubes, like you pour concrete into. We painted them black, and then we got black balloons, and we made water balloons. And so we would load the water balloon in and then catch it at the bottom and then throw it at the other ship. So the naval battle was, al fresco play, right? The naval battle was us throwing these water balloons at each other. It was great.
That's awesome. And Garret, what about you? How did you get your start?
Man, not as fun as that.
It wasn't like plays in the backyard in Red Hook.
Yeah. So I was I went to Fordham for radio, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, which it's fun to
So
be
did
in
you
an
work at
environment.
WFUV?
I did.
Cool.
Yeah. So in high school, I worked for a Clear Channel station called Fabulous 690, which was a kind of standards station, a lot of Frank Sinatra, a lot of Brian Setzer in downtown Burbank. And because it was on AM radio, like they did not care at all about what I did. And I was able to do a lot more because it's music on AM, like nobody listens to it. And that job, I was able to edit like Gary Owens, who is the voice of Space Ghost. I was able to work with Daisy Torme, Mel Torme's daughter, and like all these like really cool, wacky people. And then that pushed me to go to Fordham because they had this really intimate relationship with WFUV. So I was working at WFUV and like doing events and going to events in, this is 2010. So like the New York cocktail scene is exploding at the time, and there's just things that are happening every day. And I did 2 kind of things as an amateur where Julie Reiner was around, and I had been a regular at her bar that she had recently opened called Lani Kai, because I was into the tropical thing, like was already firmly implanted in what I cared about. Like starting at Fabulous 690, I got really into like Martin Denny and Arthur Lyman and all of those records, and just like kept collecting them throughout, school. And when Lani Kai and Painkiller opened, I was like, oh my God, I can actually like go to these places that I've like just seen in like record covers. And Julie was kind enough, after I had worked this event at Lani Kai as an amateur, to, say like, hey, I know you're looking for a job. I'm consulting on this place called Monkey Bar for Graydon Carter, who owns it, and he owns Vanity Fair. And, I'm going to have a lot of like very talented people there that, worked at Clover or Flatiron or Lonnie, and you could learn a lot from them if, and I'll recommend you. It's up to you to get the job. And, I started working there, and the head bartender was Brian Schneider, who now owns Quick Eternity. And I was kind of like learning the greatest hits of all of Julie's bars like very quickly. And, Frankie Marshall was a part of that team. It was a really, it was like a quick, like, all right, you're now in cocktail world, like 101. And I was a lunchtime bartender. I was a bar back. And I just basically said yes to everything for about a year and a half. And then at the same time, and I think this really like ties into Sunken Harbor Club a little bit, is, there was a point where those tropical bars that I really liked, like Painkiller and Lani Kai, started to close, and pop-up culture really took over what the like faux tropical drink, the like what some people call the tiki drink space in New York. And I was going to Tiki Mondays with Brian Miller a lot and doing work with him. And, it was interesting to see that basically like all those things that I cared about became like an underground thing in New York. And there wasn't like an actual space to do that like 7 days a week. But because of that, I was able to run into people like Adam Colasar, and then he hooked me up with the folks at Prime Meats, and I was there for a long time.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and I think that's probably how I met you, because Damon Bolte had his original version of the Speakeasy podcast, and he interviewed you, and I think that's the reason I went to Fort Defiance was that interview.
Boy, people actually listen to podcasts.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
We hope so. We hope so. Okay, so you've brought us perfectly to Fort Defiance. So you obviously go to work at Pegu, other places, I'm assuming, and then you decide to open a bar in Red Hook. Yes.
Yeah, Pegu Club, and that's it. I was working,
and you're like, I'm going to do it on my own now. Good for you.
That was it. So Pegu Club, I worked there for almost 2 years,
okay.
And I was working at a neighborhood bar called the Red Hook Bait and Tackle as well, which was a sorely missed dive bar, though we're probably all healthier for the fact that it's not there anymore. But,
which, just to jump in, we have some of their decor, right?
We do, yeah.
Okay,
I love that.
Yeah.
The lamp when you walk in on the right, the old sea captain working on model boats, that's from the Bait and Tackle.
Oh, that's cool.
A place, a community center dear to all of our hearts. And yes, our livers are better, but go on. I'm sorry.
So I opened Fort Defiance in 2009. And after a few years, I hired a guy who really wanted a bartending job at Fort, and actually went to go work at Frankie's in the city, I think.
Oh, 570. Which
I think
is now
that was
Anton's.
Yeah, I think that was his first bartending job. But he was a neighbor, and his name is Zach Overman, and he now runs Lorsan out in Seattle.
Okay.
And he does a great job there, and the drinks are amazing, and his menus are great. Anyway, he really wanted to do tropical drinks at Fort. Now, I was a Pegu Club bartender, and we didn't do that.
Right, you did classics.
Yeah, we didn't mess around with
You
that
were
kind
a
of thing.
tropical drinks skeptic.
I was more than a skeptic. I was like, no way. Like, we're not doing it. And then I would be downstairs in my little basement office, and I would see him like walking through the gloom of the basement towards me with like a blue drink in his hand, just like put it on the desk, and then he would like walk away. So that happened over and over again. And like the drinks were getting better and better, honestly. And I was like, okay, we'll do it. He wanted to do like a monthly event. And I was like, if we're going to do it, let's go whole hog. Let's do it like once a week. And so we decided to do it once a week. We called it Forbidden Island at first, not realizing that there was already a bar called Forbidden Island in California. And then I was like, we got to switch up the name. So he sent me an email with like 100 names, like 100 tiki bar names. I don't know if he used like a generator
you still have that
for it.
list?
I do.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So one of them was Sunken Harbor, and this is in 2013, by the way. Mm-hmm. And Sunken Harbor really stuck with me because we had just lived through Hurricane Sandy in Red Hook, which was in 2012. And there was something about it that was creepy, but not too creepy. And it was evocative, but of what, it's hard to say. Like, what is a sunken harbor? Like, it just like, it made me think, and it stuck with me, and we went with it. And then I added a club on the end because of the Charles Baker thing, honestly, because I was always, fascinated with the places where he used to drink. And it was like hotel bars and private clubs. And like the Jockey Club, the Strangers Club,
right,
like that kind of thing. And I was like, Sunken Harbor Club, that's even weirder and more evocative. And I'll figure out what it means later, So we went with that, and we started to do it every Thursday. Zach did all the menus, he designed them, and he came up with all the drinks, and it caught on. It was like it was a thing, and and then. I guess I can pause there. There's probably some other stuff to fill in, but I could get to the part where we decided to make it like a brick and mortar place. This was in 2015. Now, it's going along well. I think Zach had already moved on. He had left. Another bartender,
and you were still doing
over.
it. So you were like, I'm bought in at this point.
That's
like,
it.
We're gonna do this. Yeah,
and we had done a couple events in other cities where I was representing Slowly Surely, which was Jim Kearns' bar that I was working at the time, and you were representing Sunken Harbor Club. And it's Slowly Surely, I just started kind of doing my own version of a pop-up called Exotica. And we had worked the South Beach Food and Wine Festival together, which was crazy.
Okay.
That was insane.
Yeah, Guy Fieri was a judge,
Okay.
which was incredible. We all went to Flavortown.
Yeah, as I say, like a lot of boom sauce.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, that was, I think, that festival was, they did 2 or 3 years where they brought bars from outside of Florida to do it, and it was crazy the amount of, because everyone went all in on bringing their full setup there, and it was the best kind of bar crawl you could get for your money at that time. And then we had also worked the Hukilau Festival, which was like this sort of retro pop culture festival in Florida. So we kept running into each other, mostly in Florida,
That's right.
for whatever reason.
Were you at the New York City Wine and Food Festival event?
Yes.
So there was like a tiki, like a cocktail contest that Sunken Harbor Club won with a version of the White Zombie.
Mm-hmm.
It was a frozen White Zombie, and I remember how cold it was that night. It was freaking.
It was on
freezing.
a Pier 57 outside in October.
Well, that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah.
Windy and so cold, and I had a frozen drink. I was like, "This is not going to work," but somehow it did. And we went all out for that one too. And some questionable costume choices on my part, but we can move on from that. But
it was really evocative of that time of like, it was this really almost like punk rock kind of underground thing where if you cared about these cocktails, like, a 151 Swizzle or Zombie or something, you did these like nights where you bought out a space and then you created like your own scene that showed up like once a month or once a week. And that was very different than like what was happening in San Francisco or Chicago, where they had these giant sort of staple bars like Smuggler's Cove, where they're running 7 days a week. And for this, it was much more underground, which meant that the community was much more tight knit.
Yeah.
And also just the passions run much higher because most of the time, with the Sunken Harbor Club pop-up or like what I was doing, you're taking time off from your normal job to work.
Right. So you're really bought in at this point. Really bought in. Okay,
so then 2015, 2016, I start to look around for a space to open Sunken Harbor Club as like a permanent brick and mortar bar. I had just gotten divorced. I had like incredible bills to pay, and I was like, little old Fort Defiance in Red Hook is not gonna do it. So I needed something else to happen. So I really wanted to open downtown Brooklyn because my son went to school there. I got divorced in the courthouse there, and after the divorce, I went out with my lawyer, and I really wanted like a martini, and I ended up getting a prickly pear margarita at Rocco's Tacos across the street from the courthouse because there were no bars.
Nothing. There was nothing.
So it's like the second densest transportation hub in the city. First is Times Square, and
I actually didn't know that. That's amazing.
I know a lot about the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So I was like, that's where it's got to be. So I was looking around. I've looked at a few other spaces too, but I really wanted to be downtown. And then cut to one day, I bring my friend Ben along because Ben knows everything about buildings, and he can really look at a space and know what's happening. And we had been playing around with the idea of possibly doing something together, maybe this, and so we were downtown. And you want to take it from here?
Yeah, we looked at a space on Willoughby.
Okay.
And I was just kind of along for the ride, a friendly consultant almost. But, we were talking about maybe collaborating, or we would do the food program at the new place. We saw a space on Willoughby that was okay, but it had issues and it wasn't right. And the real estate agent said, there's another space around the corner I could show you if you want to see. We're like, sure, we'll go. And we walked around the corner and we walk up to it and we're like, holy shit, this is Gage and Tollner.
So you knew it already. You knew.
I knew about it because I somehow read about it a decade earlier when we were running the Good Fork, and my wife and I were just working crazy hours there and learning the business. And I read about it somewhere and I became obsessed with it. I had never been there when it was open, but I became obsessed with it and the idea of it. And so I was researching it. I discovered that one of the owners in the 80s, Peter Ashkenazi, was a good customer of mine at the Good Fork. And so I went through all of back in those days, it was before Resi. And so I had all these black notebooks where I would write down people who wanted a reservation and write down their phone number. And then I would call them back and write it in pencil in the book. And I went through all those books looking for his phone number, and I found it. And I called him up and I was like, Peter, thanks for your support at the Good Fork. What about this Gage and Tollner place? And he said, oh, you're not ready.
Really?
And he said it's complicated and it's hard to do business there. And this is a decade ago, right?
Yeah.
And he was right. There was too hard just to figure out one restaurant, let alone try something like that. So I totally, let it go. And then a decade later, we wander into the place, and now it's available and cleaned out. And we were like, we got to do this.
So, because it was like an Arby's or something, right?
It had been an Arby's.
Yeah.
The sign on the front of the building, which now says Gage and Tollner, said Arby's. And I kept some of the sign. So I have the orange, the cowboy hat that says Arby's in cursive. I have that part of the big neon sign.
Oh, that's amazing.
I have one side. Mike Shannon, the actor, has the other side because he one of our investors, is a friend of mine.
Yeah, I mean,
he was like,
you guys are all friends.
Of course, he was like, what about that Arby's sign?
He's a huge Arby's fan.
Yeah. He's like,
who's not?
So I gave it to him as a present. It's hanging on the wall in his house.
So, because you were looking for a space for Sunken Harbor Club, but I think, and we're talking about Sunken Harbor, but I knew we would have to talk about Gage too. I mean, it just happened this was available, so then you're like, we got to do both?
Well, that's it. Well, in that day, we came to that conclusion.
Wow, okay.
So I said, we looked at the whole building, we looked at the space on the second floor, and I said, oh, well, we can do the Sunken Harbor Club upstairs, and it'll be so cool. And the reason I was so excited about the whole thing, and the reason it was like instantly became our project instead of just St. John's project, is because for me, that idea of the steakhouse, the chop house that has the weird bar, that has like the almost speakeasy, the separate lounge, that totally different flavor, it creates a sense of the two things combined are greater than the sum of their parts. In other words, it creates this kind of cool excitement for people to be able to have those vibes together. And so that was the idea. That was a concept.
That's cool.
We not only should we do Gage and Tollner, but if we do Gage and Tollner, we have to do the Sunken Harbor Club upstairs because it creates that romantic you go figure, that hidden thing. So to me, they've always been part and parcel. So
you mentioned Michael Shannon as an investor. So did you guys already know, did you have people that were like, we want to back you the next thing you do? Or because that's one of the things that people have no idea how they'll do is how are they going to pay for it? How do you actually open a space, right? How do you get the financing to do that in the first place?
It was crazy. It was crazy. I love actually talking about this because I think the way we did it is so insane, but it worked for us. We were Red Hook guys, and we like to bootstrap stuff, and it would have been great if we had one whale come in and just give us a couple $1 million, but and the way that we both had successful restaurants happening. Ben and so he had the Good Fork and INSA. I had Fort Defiance, but they weren't they're not big Manhattan places.
Yeah.
We're pretty, we're pretty independent. So and no one wanted to do a restaurant downtown. That didn't make any sense. It's also it's rehabbing a Victorian mansion that was going to be a crazy big job. It's just there were a lot of problems. So we wanted this lease really bad, and we needed to raise the money to get the lease before anyone else did.
Mm-hmm.
So while we were in this space, we got the number of the super, and we would call him up and give him $20 to let us in the space and look around. And one time that we were in there, there was somebody else with blueprints out, and it was I looked at the blueprint, and it was for the space, the dining room at Gage and Tollner, but it was all cut up into these little spaces. And it was going to be a Columbia Care medical marijuana dispensary.
Oh my God.
And I was like, oh my God, like this is real. And we have to do something about this.
We need to save this place right now.
Right. So we launched a regulation crowdfunding campaign in 2018, I want to say. And researched how to run it and got offered the New York Times an exclusive on the story and like really did it all, I think, pretty well in retrospect. But we ended up raising about $450,000 through that. Now, regulation crowdfunding it was essentially a loan that would be paid back from 425 individual investors. So it was like, that's a lot. It's a lot of different investors.
Yeah.
And each person between like 1 and 5,000 is what they would, essentially lend, although you call it an investment, but go on, St. John.
Yeah. So we did this in part to raise money and in part to generate the interest from the bigger investors, the equity investors that we knew we needed.
Okay.
So the entire budget we ended up raising was $2.3 million, about $500,000 through crowdfunding, $1.3 million through traditional equity investment, and $500,000 as a loan from the SBA. The equity investment is also totally crazy. Instead of having like 2 or 3 big investors, we had 40 individual investors. So it was a lot to keep track of.
That's a lot, guys.
And the like the lawyers were like, "What is this? Like we've never seen this before." So yeah.
Was this before Death & Co. started doing the crowdfunding?
Yeah.
Had to have been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were
before.
in unmarked territory at this point.
No one knew what regulation crowdfunding was.
Yeah.
Half of every call or meeting with an investor was explaining what it was.
Wow.
Yeah. And I will say that having a lot of, for our equity investors, having not 1 or 2 big, and not restaurant groups and not like hedge funds, but it was all just people, right? Worked out amazingly well because we had, first of all, they all, a lot of them brought stuff to the table, like mostly enthusiasm, but also the cool things that they do in their lives, right? And we just are very lucky. As a group, our investors are wonderful and they're supportive, and they, a lot of them get to come and eat because they live in New York, not all of them, but they're all kind of true believers in a way. And they're totally different from one another. And that just contributes to the kind of culture of the whole place on a certain level, I think. But
it's a lot of family, it's family friends, and then there's like some real randos in there that just kind of found out about it and decide to come in. But yeah, they range from like a Hollywood movie star to like an MTA employee. And like everyone in between. It's great.
That's very, very cool. So you get the space. How soon did Garret you sign on, or did you when you were thinking about Sunken Harbor Club and what it would be, like, did you already know who you wanted to lead it, how that was going to work?
So originally I was working with the last bartender to helmet at Fort Defiance. Okay. He was going to be the original head bartender, and he actually was. I mean, I don't know if he had that title exactly.
He was. Yeah.
But like 3/4 of the way through this process, I was now like getting comfortable taking like big swings. Yeah. And I was like, who I want to work on this project?
Well, COVID really threw all the cards up in the air.
Yeah.
Because when all of this crowdfunding stuff was going on, and the initial like article of the New York Times, I was working at Existing Conditions. I was working for Dave Arnold and Don Lee, and I had done project. I did Slowly Surely with Jim Kearns and was doing a lot of my own stuff there. And I wanted to be a student again. I wanted to kind of start from scratch and learn, something new. And they taught me a lot, and it's informed the rest of my life. The first training we did with Don, we were talking about what makes a lime, and like why can't an orange act that way? And that was like the foundations of acid adjusting and all this other stuff. And over that period of time that I worked there, which is about 2.5 years, I started folding all those techniques into tropical drinks and was able to get some nice press out of it and just really get some like interesting results out of like, hey, like, you know, if you put a very tart acid adjusted grapefruit in a Navy grog, maybe it's going to solve some of the problems that Navy grogs have, that are like why they're not as consistent as they were in the 1960s. So what ended up happening is once kind of COVID hit, you know, we can't work in bars anymore, right? The stuff that I was working on for my pop-up Exotica, which was at Rain's Law Room, it was the Midtown location that they closed on Sundays. And Megan Dorman basically just gave me free reign to do what I wanted, which was amazing. Because I think there's sort of like two flavors of pop-up, which is there's the one where you kind of just experiment, and there's the other where it's like you have a sponsor and there's like, you know, demands for that.
Yes.
And this was much more on the experimental side
you
of it.
guys do whatever you wanted,
which
basically.
was, I to this day, very thankful that she let us do that, because there's no financial security for that. But we were doing a lot of experimentation. I was doing a lot of that kind of stuff. And then COVID happened, and I realized I wanted to continue this process. And that just ended up being the book Tropical Standard.
Yep.
And that came about because Ben Schaefer, my co-author, came up to me. He called me on the phone because we're all social distancing. He called me and he wanted to do this book project about like weird New York subculture, like cocktail subculture stuff. And he wanted the first one to be about Exotica. And I came back to him with a proposal for like a 250-page book, and that became Tropical Standard. But to condense long story, once I wrote the book, I was starting to like go out there and like lightly promote it. It wasn't necessarily announced yet. And I did a podcast in LA called Inside the Desert Oasis Room that was very, you know, centered on tiki culture. And they had interviewed the folks from the Don the Beachcomber documentary, which is called Dawn of Tiki. And the host, Adrian, told me, he was like, you got to talk to these guys, you know, the weird stuff you're doing with like all this, you know, sciencey stuff. I think they'd be interested in filming you. And I said, cool. I sent them an email. They said, we're going to be in New York in a couple weeks. We'll send you a message when we're there. So the Dawn of Tiki people call me and say, we're going to set up this interview. We should go to your job because that would make the most sense. And I was like, well, my job doesn't exist anymore. Existing conditions are closed.
Yeah.
So
They just totally closed it in COVID, right? It's like done.
it was the company Cocktail Kingdom moved Mace into that space, and they just decided to not move existing. You know, complicated. You know, as the times were. But I didn't have a space to film that interview. I was like, I mean, we could do it at my house, you know. But I knew the bones of Sunken Harbor Club were there because they were planning on. The initial plan was to open it a couple months after Gage and Tollner, right?
Right. The original opening date of Gage and Tollner was March 15th, 2020.
Yeah.
It's not a
great
date.
not a great date.
And you did one friends and family?
Well, we did all the friends and family.
Yeah.
And because we had done the crowdsourcing, we did extra parties. So we did, I think, 3 parties, like big parties for investors. We did for all of the crowdfunding people.
Because we had literally hundreds of investors.
Yes. We did the equity investors, a separate party, which we put a lavish spread out for, and open bar, and we had the old Mater D. He sang songs, and I met everyone from the fire department and the police department, one of whom probably gave me COVID, and because we were all shaking hands. And we had everyone trained. We had hired everybody. We had walk-ins full of food, and we had 2,000 reservations on the books for the first month. And
I remember too. I think what people don't know about Gage, that I only know because I live close and was following along because I wanted to go in. And I remember meeting you, Cindy, for the first time, like with my wife. I think a week after you finally opened, was that you guys also, everyone closed down, but you closed down for a much longer time because of this belief that people had to experience the space, right? You weren't going to open outdoor dining.
Right.
So you were closed for a lot longer than I think anyone else was in COVID.
Yeah.
Which is also Pretty insane.
100%. And I mean, really, we were never open, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
we were about to open. And we did do some, to ghost
Yeah.
to sort of help out a bit. And also, we just want to throw the food away. Like, we had all this stuff in the walk-ins, and we had all these people who were involved. But we did have to put it on hold. And I will say that, that there was a silver lining to it. Financially, it was a disaster. We had to burn through all of our operating capital. So now, personally, I'm 3 for 3 of having opened a restaurant with 0 operating capital.
Wow, great.
Which you're not supposed to do.
Yeah, nah.
But anyway, we burned through all of that, and we had to take an SBA loan and so forth. But for the restaurant itself and what it ended up becoming, I think it was actually a good thing, because we didn't know what we were doing yet. We were going to open because we had to, but we were going to get steamrolled. We were going to be full from the beginning, which you never should be when you open a restaurant, because it's all muscle memory. You got to learn what works.
Yeah.
And you can't just suddenly be full and do a good job. And we weren't going to do a good job, but not as good as we ended up doing. And then construction-wise, all kinds of things weren't done yet. The stairs, we didn't have stairs to the basement from the sidewalk. We were just going to I was going to build a plywood ramp and just slide things down. And we didn't have, the Sunken Harbor Club wasn't done. The private dining rooms weren't done. I mean, they didn't open until after we opened later anyway still, but it was, and then when we did open, because we were still coming out of COVID, we were 50%. So we did every other table, right?
Yep.
And that helped, because then we're opening with not as many covers, which allows us to find out what we're doing.
Yeah.
So
okay, so you knew that it existed.
So I knew the space was there, because I think Shannon Musfer had maybe shot. I think Shannon shot a promo with Denison rum there. So I saw it in this little promo. I was like, oh, it looks nice. So I called Sinja and I said, hey, I think I can get you a location fee for this documentary. Are you cool with me doing an interview here? And everyone was, worked out. The production team said, yeah, that's great. And we did the interview, and I had just kind of finished. We had turned in an initial draft of Tropical Standard. So I was kind of done with the book and was starting to look at cocktail jobs again. And I had, popped my head in 1 or 2 interviews. And, a month later, I'm just walking around New York, and I realized I was like, I should just call Sinjin and see if he needs help with this space, because nothing else was calling to me. I didn't want to, work in a restaurant or this and that. And I wanted something that would work with the last 2 years of my life, which was writing Tropical Standard and having it, having something that would coexist together. And, I called him and he said, look, I have this other guy, Stephen Belowski, who is the head bartender, but let me have a conversation with him, because we need a lot of help after, COVID, getting the train back up and running. It's like when a car is off, offline for 4 years, you have to fix it to turn it back on. Right. So it's that initial conversation, I think, was really short. Right. And then we all met and just had a conversation about what we wanted to see in a bar, and sat upstairs and talked about it. And I feel like that first conversation, we covered a lot of territory. We covered what the menu should look like what, you don't see in a lot of these types of bars that we'd like to see. What are the staples of the Sunken Harbor Club pop-up that need to be on the menu? I mean, it was a very quick conversation.
So you're basically hosting this podcast for me, Garret. I really appreciate it, because you brought me to my next thing, which is when you walk into Sunken Harbor Club, it feels like it's been there forever. It feels like you discovered it. And now that I know that you're a playwright,
Right.
I know that you and a storyteller, and it is you've walked into this incredible soundstage where you've written the entire story for everybody. And what did you guys talk about? What did you want to see in a bar? I mean, was this what you wanted?
Well, let me to what you just said. It's like you walked in and it's like you found it there. So I actually wrote a document before we opened that was talking about the idea behind the bar, and the idea was that we found it.
Yeah.
Ben and I even shot a photo shoot where the story that we told was that we found it upstairs behind a false wall, and we found these books there behind the bar, called the Compendium Bibendium. They were the annals of the Sunken Harbor Club that actually existed, but they were all written in code. So Ben and I did a photo shoot where we were like wearing these green visors, and we were like trying to decode these books,
like 30s accountant outfits. Yeah,
and I designed the space. So and I've always that feeling of discovery, but also, there's a great book. I don't know if you know this book. It's called A View from Nowhere. That my friend Rob Miller introduced me to decades and decades ago. And it's this guy who traveled around the country going to dive bars, and he had a whole rating system for them. And he would each page was like a little review of the dive bar. And he had all these categories. So there was the old fart factor. There was, say, can you see? And that has to do with how bright or dim it is. And then there was the crapola factor. And the crapola is all the stuff that you see, And so all those things are always on my mind when designing or building a restaurant, in particular a bar. And St. John was like, let's make it so that it was, pretend it was already here. And so I was like, well, I was somewhat being literal. I was like, well, it's a Sunken Harbor Club. I should just build a ship. The idea was, I pitched to you. I said, let's build a ship that you're at the inside of the ship, an old galleon, and it sank to the bottom of the ocean and then tilted over sideways. So I don't know if you noticed, but when you're in there, the shelves behind the bar are a little bit crooked.
Which really bothers some people.
And the mural with the window in front of it is is off.
It's crooked,
It's crooked. The whole thing's crooked. I didn't go so far as to make the bar itself crooked, which I sort of regret. I wish we had. It would have been a little more complicated for seating, shorter people on the left and taller people on the right. We should have done that. But I did have to talk you guys into the crooked shelves. They didn't think it was going to work functionally.
That's true. Yeah.
And I was like, no, bottles are by definition bottom weighted. It's going to be fine. And it wasn't super crooked, right?
Yeah. And we were thinking about like the Molokai bar at the Maikai, which is beautiful and, is like, it's like you're inside a ship or on the deck of a ship.
The HMS Bounty is what it was. The Molokai was based on. Yeah.
Okay.
And then there's a room at the New York Yacht Club that is it's underneath the main room that also looks like the inside of a ship. And so it's like it's been done before in different ways, but it's like it's still a great idea. It's still a great idea.
I mean, and you guys also, it's not, yes, it's the ship. It's also, it's the sounds in the space. It's the ringing of the bell. It's like was that always from the beginning the plan that like if you're gonna have drinks here, we're gonna make sure that you are inside this ship basically, and that you're on the water.
A lot of those things came out organically over time, which I think I like that happened. I wish that all those things were there on day one, but. Because they were organic and a lot of them just came from like weird things we wanted to try out during service and people were responsive to it, I think it felt more natural over time.
Okay.
But really it goes back to that initial conversation we had about the menu, which I think at the time, the menu of a lot of these kind of like faux tropical bars were, okay, here's a bunch of modern drinks, here's a bunch of classics. And the way I had run my pop-up, I would say the same thing with the Sunken Harbor Club pop-up, is like, if you do that, then there's a certain sect of people that are only going to order classics or only order modern. And that's a very limited story that you can tell. And in writing Tropical Standard, I saw that a lot of these old menus, including places like the Maikai and Down the Beachcomber, were all about like the light, medium, and heavy cocktails. And the original Don the Beachcomber menu, it was before sunset, sunset, after. And like before sunset was like the Beachcomber's Gold and like, I don't know why the zombie was sunset, but like some of the thought processes are a little mysterious now. But we talked about it and we're like, what if we did the depths of the ocean?
Yeah.
And that once we made that decision, it was much clearer as to what the menu was going to look like, where things were going to land, and they had some classics that we needed to put on the menu, like the Angostura Colada and the White Zombie, and that immediately went in our strongest section. And then it was like, all right, let's fill out these other sections. And it ended up being, when we were writing this menu, that we accidentally did this process, which I just heard about this now. There's a advertising executive. His name is Rory Sutherland. He works for Ogilvy, and he does a lot of like public speaking. And he talked about this process called reverse benchmarking, where you go after things that your competition isn't investing in and invest heavy in it. And his example was EMP building out their coffee program and their beer program. And suddenly the people that really care about that, that's everything to them. And for us, I realized in retrospect, we did that with a couple of different categories, stirred drinks, non-alcs, and carbonated drinks. I would say savory drinks too, to some extent. But like those three categories we really heavily invested in, which normally, especially in the 2010s, you went to like, any sort of like rum-focused bar, maybe you get a rum old fashioned, maybe a rum Manhattan if you're lucky. But we put a lot of time and effort into looking at the Remember the Maine, doing some version of a Negroni, like really building out that initial offering of stirred cocktails. And I think it defined us in a different way, where people that maybe didn't want a crushed ice drink could feel comfortable in this space. And then that allowed a much larger group of people to come in, people that aren't drinking, people that maybe want something drier, and like have this, kind of cool set of regulars that maybe wouldn't necessarily have been if we had just done the standards that were on every single menu.
Interesting. So once you conceived of it, you built it, what did you know that there would be a audience from day one? I mean, obviously you had the pop-up, so there was a built-in audience, but what was your sort of nerves like going into finally deciding to open it? And Gage has already been open for how many months at this point?
Gage opened in April 21.
Yeah.
Sunken opened in November.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, at that point we had our hands full with Gage and Tollner. It was a going concern. It was getting well reviewed. People liked it. So Sunken was like, it was almost like it felt like almost like a soft opening upstairs, because it opened with not much fanfare.
Yeah.
We knew that people would find it, and we didn't do a heavy press push, if I remember.
There was
correctly.
a New York Times article.
There was a Times article, yeah.
I think I basically had like a month and a half.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, because I joined late August, and we had a month and a half to develop it, which was fine for me, because like before, it's harder with some things like building like custom glassware and stuff. That's impossible because you need a 6-month window. But I had come from the pop-up space, so I was fine with doing these like faster timetables. But it's still like, it was still a lot to do in 1 month, because we had to, I think you're from that school of like the Audrey Saunders school of like R&Ding, where it's like you make sure that like no stone is unturned. And that's very hard on a time clock like that.
Yeah.
But we were lucky enough that, I had the book as a basis to teach people. Like I had just spent 2 years outlining a philosophy of how to build drinks. So it helps when you're training people to have that in the back of your, fresh in the back of your mind. And there had been context as to what service was already at Fort Defiance. So it was just a matter of sort of like fleshing those out. And we had opened with 5 days a week to start, just because the world was so touch and go at the time.
How much are you sharing between the two spaces? Is there any sharing at all between what's happening at Gage and what's happening at Sunken?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say, just tying back to what we we're just talking about too, is it was like opening a second business after you had just opened the first business, right? And we had to learn those two businesses share quite a bit, but yet they're very, very different. And so we had to learn how to coexist. And I think that's something I'm extremely proud of where we ended up. Like, I feel like we have a really amazing coexistence now, but it wasn't necessarily immediate, and it wasn't easy to get there because we had to figure out, they operate in different ways, they serve different things, they have different vibes, and to a certain extent, different staff, because it's a specialized thing that we do in the Sunken Harbor Club, and it's a specialized thing we do downstairs. Yeah. And it took, it took time for us all to figure out how to sort of walk arm in arm. But I really feel like we did, and that's amazing. And as I said earlier on, I was always confident that it would work out because, in my opinion, the two things really made each other better, right? Being in the same building made each one better. It's really cool for Sunken Harbor Club to have this classic restaurant downstairs.
Yeah.
You know, we share management, we share, we're all one staff. We are one in the building, we are one staff. Sinjin and I and Sohi, my wife, we were really adamant that we didn't want an us and them, that we wanted to be one cohesive staff. And we are, and it's great. I would also say that like the contributions that the people who work in Sunken Harbor Club have made to the space and to the way it operates is so cool. I come from a design build background. That's where I learned to build, from some design build folks up in Vermont. And it's like we built the template, which is the ship, and I put a bunch of my own crap in there, including the lamp from the bait and tackle. But then now it's like everyone who inhabits the space has taken ownership, and so many layers have been added on. And it's just so exciting for me as the person who like built it in the first place to come in and see that and experience in that. And that goes also with the performance stuff that you were talking about. Tom Wolfson, who's one of the bartenders, comes from a theater background.
Yeah.
And he's introduced all these really like fun and cool parts of the evening that have to do with, with theater basically.
Yeah.
And that stuff's great.
Yeah,
Who
it doesn't
love
exist in any other bar in New York City. Like,
Right.
I mean, maybe there's one in the theater district I don't know about that's, but yeah, that's what makes
Jekyll
it.
and Hyde.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Does that still exist?
But what's interesting about to jump on two things. One, having the two spaces together.
Yeah.
It made sense to me because continental dining considered both of these things as part of the same genre in the like 50s and 60s. It's like you went to a steakhouse and got the tableside Caesar salad, and then you went to Trader Vic's and had a fog cutter. Like those were all seen as the same thing at one point.
That's really cool.
Which I think nowadays, like you would never put those in the same category, but like classically that was like a night out, a mid-century night out. But yeah, adding like all of these things to the space, it was so cool to be able to work with owners that were tolerant of that, because I think there are some that, you open and then it's encased in amber and that's it.
Right.
But it was a very like dynamic process. And with some of the performance things, we've kind of figured out over time with holidays like Halloween and just random occurrences that we could mirror the three parts of the menu over the entire night service, where we start in the shallows with a cast off of the boat. Then we enter the twilight zone, which has like a kind of lighting effect and the lighting changes. And then we go into the abyss for last call and the entire room goes red and there's like a red alert kind of thing. And what was interesting about that for me was, a lot of these bars that have like effects, like Trader Sam's is a great example. The effects are based on a transaction. So you buy this certain drink and then an effect happens. And we have that with the El Diablo and a couple other things. But it was really cool to have these random things happen that you don't fully know when it's gonna occur. And now we've gotten to the point where we have variations of it where you don't necessarily even know what version of it's going to be.
Yeah.
There's a Twilight Zone sequence we have that uses the original theme from the TV show, but there's also one that uses the Space Mountain theme from the Anaheim ride, and then there's a version of it that's based on kind of yacht rock that Tom Wolfson came up with. So, and we keep adding these things, and it allows for a surprise, because I think with service, there's sort of, you want predictability on your end, but you want the guests to be constantly, surprised as to what you're going to do, especially if you're open 7 days a week.
Yeah. So 2 questions. So awesome, both together, because it's about your guests. 1, how much are you sharing guests between, so that are doing both at the same time? And then 2, what percentage of the guests of Sunken do you think are like massive tiki heads? Sometimes I go there and I'm like, everyone's in a tiki shirt, so I think it's 100%.
Well, I want to throw the tiki question to Garret, but on the just on the subject of like the upstairs and downstairs relationship again, when I was researching stuff for the Sunken Harbor Club, I found that like the stories of this group called the Megatherium Club. This was a group of explorers and botanists and naturalists in the Victorian times who lived in the Smithsonian building, and they were all young and they were kind of crazy. And there's pictures of them, and they look like hanging out with them is like a blast. And they used to get into all kinds of trouble at night. They'd be gambling. They'd be like sledding down the stairs of the Smithsonian. And it was like, and they let these guys live there because they were actually doing really good work at the same time. And it caused a few problems, and it certainly was non-traditional, but it worked. And I thought like that if the Gage and if like if the oyster and chop house downstairs could be tolerant of some crazy behavior upstairs, it would really work out great. And it took us a while, and it took some changes in management to figure out the right synergy there, but it's really clicking now, I think. And yeah, I mean, the stuff, the theatrics, the lighting, the fog machine, the bubble machine, the like the different acts of a night, that's all Garret and the bar staff.
That's awesome.
And just like it took us a while to figure out how to like sit back and let them cook, and now we do. And and it really works. As far as sharing guests goes, we do share a lot. Sunken definitely has its own audience.
Yeah.
Gage has its own audience, but there is a lot of overlap.
I mean, honestly, I wish it was bigger, because there's many occasions when someone downstairs wants to come up, but it's full.
Yeah.
Which is a great problem to have.
Yeah.
But there would be a lot more, I think, up and down.
Yeah.
I think, many more of the guests who eat downstairs would love to be able to have a nightcap upstairs. It's just often, especially on a weekend, is full. So, maybe more to come.
Okay, cool.
I think the thing that people sometimes don't realize when you open a place that is, part of the larger kind of tiki scene, like faux tropical drink scene, is you are suddenly now not just a local bar, but you're a national bar. You're in that when somebody who's a fan of this comes to your bar, they're talking about their experience at Three Dots and a Dash. They're talking about their experience at Latitude 29. And it's almost like those bars are down the street from you, because people get on planes to go see all these bars. And I say this all the time to, bartenders in New York, is like, this genre has two sets of reviews. Like there's, Google and Yelp, the normal stuff, but there's, they have their own websites and their own Reddit threads and all that kind of stuff. And it's a very hardcore audience. So you have to kind of walk both of those lines, and you have to really like respect both of those communities, because they're two different types of people coming all the time. And, I think because of that, there's been more stuff that's come from Tropical Standard that's, made its way to the menu. Like, I think with the original R&D, there was very little from the book. And like over time, there has been more of a synergy between the two. And, now it's really cool for me to see my bar team kind of like thinking in those lines and then creating their own cocktails based on some of that thinking. And it's been fun to see, the martini, the Immortal Martini was in the Martini Madness last year. And that was a collaboration between Tom Wolfson and Shannon Lynch. And really cool to see that happen.
It's fun. So what does success look like to you? Like, how do you, as owners, as business owners, like, how do you define success? What does that feel like? What does it look like? How do you know when you've hit it? Do you ever know?
I mean, there's a lot, for me, there's different parts to it. I went to the business for romantic reasons. With these romantic notions of, I was speaking about this last night at the MoFad benefit, that to create a place that's a place that is like, on a romantic level, part of the sort of time-space continuum of places throughout the world and history. So like that part is important to me, and I feel like we've definitely succeeded at that. You know, it is a very special, unique spot. And then the other part, you know, obviously you need to make money, but that almost becomes incidental, and it comes pretty easily when you do all the other stuff. And for me, another part of it is to create a spot where people want to be, not only the people who go there, but also the people who, you know, inhabit it there every day, who work there. So the culture that's there, the camaraderie, the creativity, you know, I mean, I consider Garret to be a chef. I don't, you know, he's not a bartender. He is honestly, like one of the best chefs in the country. And in terms of this style of drink, maybe the best chef in the country. So we are lucky to have hitched our wagon to him. You know, it's not, he doesn't just work there. We kind of are lucky to have recruited him and his skills to make the thing happen.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I mean, watching people's faces when they turn the corner. You know, Sunken Harbor Club is like tucked. It's not only on the second floor; it's tucked away on the second floor. So you have to walk past some stuff in order to get there. And then, but seeing people's faces when they turn the corner into the Sunken Harbor Club is just amazing. It's just like seeing them just like light up. Like, what is this? You know, and then it feels just as good to see them smiling as they walk down the stairs after they've like had an experience there, to get them on the way in. I think that's what Ben and I did to get them smiling on the way out. That's, you know, Garret
I love it.
And the bar team.
Yeah, and we've cultivated this kind of fun community around the bar through something that St. John designed, which is our passport program, which is like how you become a member of the Sunken Harbor Club, which is you go through these kind of series of challenges. And I'll let St. John talk about it a little bit more, but what's been interesting is through the passport program, the space is transformed because there are challenges that require people to bring things to the space. The low boys behind the bar have stickers from bars across the world at this point, because that's one of the challenges. One of the challenges is bringing in or sending us a postcard, and we have a wall that's like all the postcard. Eventually, we're going to run out of space, but you know. And one of the other challenges is make a piece of artwork for us, and there are pieces of art behind the bar. There's three. There's 3 lamps in the space that were designed by fans that are very talented and that, you know, permanently live in Sunken Harbor Club, and that's their contribution to what, you know, it's been cool. But do you want to talk about the passport a little bit more? Yeah,
I mean, the passport, like the passport is like a booklet. It's a series of 36 challenges. You need to complete 12 of them. Once you do, you'll be offered membership in the Sunken Harbor Club. Membership is free and lasts a lifetime. The benefits of membership are largely spiritual in nature, but they do allow you to make a reservation. We hold one table for members per night. And just great. Like seeing the people that are willing to go to do these absurd things, and you can only do one challenge per visit, so you have to go 12 times. And then seeing the amount of people who are willing to do this. I mean, we sell a lot of passports.
That's crazy.
And we sell a lot online. We ship them all over the world. And people complete the passports. Now we have over 100 members now.
That's awesome.
And once you're offered membership, you get inducted to the club through a secret ceremony that I won't say anything about here on the radio. But yeah, it's wild to see the community build like this. I mean, like Sunken is 4 years old now, but in some ways it feels like it just opened last year. Like it's just got such energy right now.
Yeah.
And it's like it just feels so vibrant and so fresh.
I love it.
Yeah.
So before we get to our final 3 questions that you'll all have to answer, Sunken does exist elsewhere now. Is there a plan to have it be a larger brand than just Brooklyn? Obviously, it's also in Bermuda. Can you talk about that for a second?
Right. Yeah. There's a Sunken Harbor Club in Bermuda. There are no hard and fast plans to open it elsewhere at this time. Okay. However, I'll just leave it there.
Okay. All right. So 3 questions. You all have to answer them. First question: if you could only drink one drink at Sunken Harbor Club, which drink? Good.
I mean, I only ever drink whatever Garret I say. I go in there and
That's a
I
good
say,
answer.
"What do you want to make me? You choose." Because they're always delicious.
Yeah,
Honestly, they are
they're-
off the hook.
I think the last drink you had was probably the comeback special, maybe.
Yes.
Which is Tommy Campanola's
Yes.
drink. Really fun take on like the whole Elvis peanut butter thing. Like, and he's an Elvis fan.
Yeah.
And it even used a element from the kitchen, which is it gets garnished with like spiced beer nuts that they were making for the Dolphin Bar, which is our PDR space. Really great cocktail.
Yeah,
awesome.
Tommy's drink.
Yeah.
And Tommy, by the way, also is like a woodworker and built like a cabinet for the bar.
That's cool.
Like, so
Yeah, you should always have a carpenter on the bar
On the
staff.
bar staff.
Really
It's
fixes a
amazing.
lot of things. And he also built we now have these columns throughout the space that are like bubble tubes, and yeah, it's
I love it.
very talented.
St. John?
Mai Tai. I order them whenever I see them on the menu. Garrett's is the best, and it's not close.
His is very good. Garret.
It's so hard.
I know. Well, I mean, I'm asking you. That's just like you don't get to cop out.
No,
You
it
don't say
changes.
anything that you make.
It changes a lot. I think right now on this current version of the menu, I'm really happy that the incantation is on it, which was in Tropical Standard.
Yeah.
It's my version of the Black Magic from the Mai Kai, which the Black Magic was one of my first like favorite drinks when I was getting further down the rabbit hole. And it was cool to after publishing Tropical Standard to learn some new things about that drink and then be able to do an updated version for the bar that has some new things that people weren't expecting. And I think it's even better now. And the other thing is like just from a cultural standpoint of where we are in cocktails in 2025, espresso martinis everywhere, Carrillo, all that. In the 1950s and 60s, there was a cocktail using coffee as an acid along with lime and grapefruit and orange in this really, really progressive way that like the Black Magic is still ahead of its time now, because most coffee drinks are almost like a cup of coffee with booze in it. And they're not using the coffee as a fruit element.
Right.
And what Mariano Liquidine and the folks of the Mai Kai did is like, they really invented like a drink that stands on its own. So it's cool to just like point people to that story and be like, go to the Mai Kai, have their version, have ours, and like just expand what coffee can do in drinks because it comes from the tropics. It is a tropical ingredient and it can be used in a really interesting way outside of the normal kind of like ways you see it in most bars.
I love that. That's a great answer. All right, question number 2. Money's not an object. You can open a bar anywhere in the world.
Oh boy.
Where?
Venice, Italy.
I like that. That's a great answer.
I want to have a reason to go there.
That's fair. That's fair. I
in
like
a
that
submarine or just doesn't matter.
No, we'll sail there.
I've
Obviously.
always thought it'd be really cool to open a bar in a submarine. Come back to me.
answer. Okay. Garret.
Well, okay, I'll give you 2. If I was going to do the Sinjin response, it would be in Japan.
Yeah.
Also, Japan is just really into sort of American retro pop culture, so I think it would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And when traveling around there in the last couple of years and giving bars my book, they were like, we don't have anything like this, but we want to know more about it. So I really want to translate my book into other languages.
Let's make that happen, guys.
And then my family would want me to be in Los Angeles really badly. So
There you go.
I should say that just to make them happy.
That's
and
good.
also it's just Los Angeles is where, that's where the first On the Beachcomber was. It's where the iconic Trader Vic's was that was attached to the Hilton Hotel. So it would be really interesting to do something there.
Love it.
I'm going to say there's already a million great bars in this town, but for me, it's New Orleans because it just, to me, it's the other city that I love.
Yeah.
Just culturally, and not only because of the food and the drink and the music, but because of the way that people in New Orleans welcome others into spaces. They're always like, I've been really realizing this. The more I go there, they're always like, "Hey, come on in." That there's not gatekeeping that so much in New Orleans. Everyone's like happy you're there, no matter where you are in that town, and it's amazing. So that's what I would do.
I love it. Final question. What's one piece of advice that you would give to someone that either wants to run a bar, open a restaurant?
You mean besides don't do it?
That can be the advice.
I mean, really, I say partner with a contractor. It's really, really good advice.
Thank you.
Garret?
2, the short piece of advice is always find new stories to tell, because I think, the way just the algorithm works and people are constantly looking for content. There's always a corner that you haven't talked about or haven't looked at yet. Over the last year, we've really wanted to focus on Jasper Lefranc and his contributions to the history of Caribbean mixology. And there's always I think looking for new stories and trying to tell new stories all the time, it's a challenge because you're also want to sell the things that you're known for, and you don't want to necessarily delete the past of your work. You want to build on it, but finding new stories. I would say the other thing is, especially the way, from a technical standpoint, the way bars operate now, everything is highly batched and highly, which is I'm in favor of, but constantly audit yourself, because you will find something that you're oh, maybe this isn't sitting over time. And luckily with some of the stuff I've done on the road for Tropical Standard, I've had to make my own things that prep people are also making during the day and be all right, this is not working. We have to figure out something else. And constantly auditing yourself, because now drinks aren't just the person behind the bar making it, giving it to a guest. It's going through multiple channels, and it's possible that something that you initially designed in R&D is getting lost over time.
It's great advice.
I will say my real answer to
Please,
that,
thank you.
which is don't do it if you think it'll be fun and you like going to restaurants. But if you have a creative urge that you cannot resist, and if you hate working in an office, and you don't mind working really hard and being pretty stressed out, something will go wrong every single day. But if you can't help it, then you have to do it. And then you should do it. And it's a really rewarding and wonderful business. But it's also, tricky. And also know that a lot of people, like how I was in the beginning, you do it not realizing it's a business. And so try and pay some attention to that part of it, because it's important. It's the only way to make it work. And learning that part of it is, just the numbers and margins and all that kind of stuff. If you don't pay attention to it, then you can't do it.
Yeah. Gentlemen, this has been an absolute pleasure and treat. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of The Build Out. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, Adam.
Thank you so much. It's been fun.
Thanks so much for listening to VinePair's The Build Out. The show is produced, filmed, recorded, and edited by Darby Seasai. Editorial direction from VinePair's editor-in-chief, Joanna Chirino. Design of the logo by Marcello Bevilacqua. And thanks to the entire VinePair team, especially my co-founder, Joshua Mallon. I've been your host, Adam Teeter. Until next time, thanks for listening.